Hello, Darshan Maharaja here. Thursday's provincial election in Ontario yielded the expected result. The top line observation is that nothing changed. Premier Ford ended up with basically the same number of seats. He has as strong a majority as he had before the election. Minor changes here and there, the Ontario Liberals regaining official party status, but that is not significant enough to propel the party in the next election. But I think there is an important lesson to be drawn from this provincial election for the federal conservatives. And I thought maybe I should share this with you and invite your views also. If you saw, first of all, both Ontario Liberals and Ontario NDP were not at all prepared for this election, although we had known for roughly 6 months that Premier Ford was going to call an early election in sometime in the spring. So February is a little bit earlier than spring, but these two opposition parties were not prepared as they should have been. And I have observed elsewhere that this also reflects on their ability to be good administrators and managers. So, in that light, it is perfectly fitting, in my view, that they did not win enough seats to form government. In fact, neither of them came anywhere close to it. But that is a discussion for a separate day. For the federal conservatives, what is worth noting is that all the talking about the opposition parties, about various issues, and those are genuine failures of the Ford government. Things like inability to bring about improvements in housing, for example, even the housing starts because you expect the houses to take a few couple of years to be built fully. But even if you look at the housing starts, the numbers are far below the targets. Healthcare has been worsening. I have written extensively on that. I think I wrote 13 articles. So progressively, it has got worse. And every time a party is in the opposition, they will blame the governing party. But then, when that opposition party forms government, the metrics continue to decline. And then the former governing party blames the current governing party, which was the previous opposition party, of exactly the same things. So, that is an endless debate, number one. Number two, it failed to resonate. I also saw some attempts to revive the controversy around the Green Belt and Highway 413 and all. Those also did not resonate, and for a very good reason. You know, this all these are serious issues, but unfortunately, in the current circumstances, they fall in the blah 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 category. It's a sorry state to be in, but that's the reality. What mattered was the tariff threats from President Trump in the US and Premier Ford's claim that only he could protect Ontarians against any negative fallout of these tariffs if and when they come into effect. And first of all, the opposition parties are by default at a disadvantage in this because they are not in government. They can only propose what they are going to do, which, in my opinion, they failed to articulate properly. But Premier Ford's advantage is not to be denied. He was able to go to the US and be on American TV and meet American politicians and officials. So for the electorate, it is that perception that he is actually and already doing something about this threat is a major factor, and that is where the comparison with the federal conservatives comes in. Of late, I have seen them mounting attacks against the presumed winner of the liberal leadership contest. And I think that is a wrong track to take. First of all, you know, I have said in my previous video that, giving a detailed critique of Mr. Carney's position in Brookfield and when and how they moved their headquarters from Canada to the US. And as I said in that video, if you have to devote more than a few seconds to gain the attention of the audience, then it's not a point worth making. The actual narration may take longer. It may take 1 minute, 5 minutes, whatever. But in the first few seconds, uh, your message has to be able to attract the attention of the listener. For example, as I said in that video, the Sustainable Technologies Development Corporation. The simple thing is they stole $400 million. Now, very few people have handled that kind of money, but everybody is aware of what $400 million is, how much money it is. So now you have their attention, and then you can go into the nitty gritty of how the money was allegedly siphoned off, etc. That is not possible in the case of Mr. Carney vis-a-vis Brookfield. So my advice would be to not make this the main thrust. Maybe they can talk about it, but not make it the main thrust. Then they are uh, criticizing Mr. Carney on carbon tax, even calling him carbon tax Carney. 2 points here. One is that this whole talk about carbon tax has been going on for so long, and validly so, but just because it has been going on for more than 2 years, it doesn't resonate as much with the listener. People tune out. Okay, yeah, they are banging on about carbon tax again. And secondly, this is an accusation that Mr. Carney can uh, credibly counter, at least uh, when it comes to people who are willing to vote or willing to consider voting for the Liberal Party. So they are wasting resources here, the Conservatives. Then the fact that he was the advisor to Prime Minister Trudeau doesn't matter, because as long as he says that he will reverse or change all those policies, and that he was only an advisor and things were done against his advice, we have no way of knowing. So you are getting into an area where you cannot prove anything. I would tell them not to uh, spend too many resources on that. Then the latest thing is that he claimed, Mr. Carney, he claimed that he had resigned from all his positions, but it turns out that there are some positions from which he has not yet resigned, or that he has, three citizenships, citizenship of three countries. This reminds me of the time when SNC Lavalin controversy broke, Lav scam, as it was known at the time. And it did not dent Prime Minister Trudeau's standing sufficiently to cause him to lose the election. Same thing with We Charity, because again, this is like the Brookfield scenario. Uh, these are complex issues. You cannot distill them into sound bites, and it presupposes that the audience is willing to devote the necessary time and energy to understand what you are saying. That assumption is not always valid, and sometimes it is fatal. And one might argue that Prime Minister Trudeau was able to survive these controversies because of his last name, and that is a valid defense, or at least a valid argument that if any other prime minister had been in even one of these controversies, their political career would have ended. But we have to remember that the image of Mr. Carney, as it is being promoted, and with basis that he was governor of two central banks, Bank of Canada and Bank of England, and that he has worked in all these, including Brookfield. What the conservatives are trying to make into a negative uh, may work out to Mr. Carney's benefit, that he has worked in very large corporations. He is used to dealing with complex issues, etc. So, in terms of that image or reputation, I think there is potential for Mr. Carney to be exactly where Prime Minister Trudeau was in the era of even blackface. It did not, it wasn't sufficient for Liberal Party to lose the election. They were reduced to a minority, but they did not lose the election. So, again, we are looking at comparable stature here of Prime Minister Trudeau and Mr. Carney. The issue that this next federal election will boil down to is exactly what it was in the Ontario election, namely, who can protect Canada and Canadians better against the tariffs threat and talk about making Canada 51st state by President Trump. And you don't do that by harping about your opponent. You have to define yourself that this is what I'm going to do. This brings to mind a story that we all heard in our childhood as to how do you make a line shorter without touching it? The answer is you draw a longer line. So that is what I think the conservatives need to do. They need to draw their own line, which is longer than that of Mr. Carney or the Liberal Party of Canada. As to how they can do that, well, that is where the strategists who are advising the Conservative Party have to earn their keep. I don't want to sound arrogant here, but that is the expression that comes to mind. They have to come up with ways to uh, show to the voters that no matter what Mr. Carney says he can do to protect you, we can do better than that. And as I suggested in my previous video, we know that Conservative MP Jamil Jiwani is very close to US Vice President J.D. Vance. So maybe they can use that as a back channel, uh, maybe get some positive noises coming out of the US regarding certain areas where they are not necessarily endorsing what the conservatives are saying, but they have a lot in common. That would be the diplomatic way to go about this. Let me know what you think. I'll see you again in the next video. Until then, goodbye and be well.